Hey there YouTube, Wrestling Optimus here, back with another action figure review. It's Wednesday night, and you know what that means, time for AEW Dynamite on TNT. Specifically, tonight is the St. Patrick's Day Slam, a special holiday-themed episode where the women will main event for the first time in AEW history as Britt Baker takes on Thunder Rosa in an unsanctioned lights-out match. The rest of the card looks stacked as well, so let's jump right into it. But first, if you're new here, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more pro wrestling and action figure content. Now, we're headed into my custom dailies place, so for a recap and review, let's take it over the action figures. Dynamite opens with a match between Pentagon Jr. and Cody Rhodes. After the Lord of Lucha Libre almost broke Cody's arm in their ladder match at Revolution, he's back to finish the job and send Cody, who's wearing green like most of the wrestlers at ringside, on an early paternity leave. Pentagon attacks before the bell and tears off the green shirt so he can chop Cody's bare chest. Surprisingly, Penta works the leg at first instead of the injured shoulder. Eventually, he switches over to the arm, super kicking it several times. Cody hits a tope suicida that puts Penta through a barricade, then follows that up with a Canadian Destroyer and a cutter, but Pentagon kicks out. In the end, Cody reverses an arm snap into a roll-up for the 1-2-3. Predictably, Penta attacks Cody afterwards before Arn Anderson, Dustin, and the Gun Club run out. QT Marshall, on the other hand, walks out suspiciously late and half-heartedly asks if Cody is okay, while the rest of the Nightmare family looks pissed. I actually have a theory that QT was offended when Lee Johnson won his first match the other week and thanked all of his trainers by name except for QT. Alex Marvez interviews the Young Bucks backstage. Matt admits that Rey Fenix was able to beat him and his brother last year in singles competition, but they're the tag team champions. Don Callis interrupts with fake condolences for Papa Buck. He says the Young Bucks helped to found All Elite Wrestling, but there's nothing elite about them anymore. I guess he didn't notice the aforementioned tag team titles. Matt says Don changed their best friend Kenny, but he says it was for the best because now Omega is a wrestling god. Jade Cargill takes on Dani Jordan, a jobber from Dark. Cargill is green as hell in the ring, and I'm not talking about St. Patrick's Day, but she's visually impressive with eye-catching power. She wins in a squash, then tries to fight Red Velvet at ringside. MJF leads out his new faction, apparently called Pinnacle. Tully Blanchard says that last week, they stood across the ring from the Inner Circle, the best group in AEW. Then, he goes on to describe how they were completely decimated by MJF and co. So that must make Pinnacle the new best group in AEW. Now, just how Tully started his career with the greatest faction in wrestling, he's going to end his career with the greatest faction in wrestling. MJF explains how he was the real Judas, wink, saying it took a lot for him to pretend to like Chris Jericho for 6 months and play second fiddle. But it was all worth it in order to systematically dismantle the Inner Circle from the inside, including separating Chris and Sammy. Then, he got the online marks to believe that he was going to take over the group. In actuality, his real plan was to form an even stronger group all along. Max introduces each member of Pinnacle and says they plan to win every major title in the sport while taking whatever they want, starting with Jericho's locker room. Next, we get a 10-man tag team match as Matt Hardy, Private Party, and their new signees the Butcher and the Blade take on Jurassic Express and Bear Country. The babyfaces stand tall after an early scuffle, so Bear Country tosses Marco Stunt onto the heels in a funny spot. After a commercial, the faces remain in control until Marco essentially goes into business for himself, screwing up his team's cohesion. Butcher and Blade somehow take out Bear Country, Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy, leaving Marco open to an attack from Matt Hardy. This allows Private Party to hit the gin and juice, but Matt insists they tag him in to score the pinfall with a twist of fate. Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston are getting ready for their match tonight. Mox isn't in a good mood because the Good Brothers have become a major problem for him. He's mad, not only because he wasted money on Talking Shop-A-Mania, but because Gallows and Anderson are cheap shot artists. Eddie admits that the Good Brothers have won championships all over the world, but this isn't Japan or the Impact Zone. It's their house. He ends by dropping references to the Bullet Club and the Forbidden Door. Christian Cage is with Dasha and says he's not just a workhorse, he's the workhorse in wrestling. Then he reassures younger guys on the roster that he's not here to take away their opportunities. However, he does want a shot at Kenny Omega and the world title, although he understands he'll have to get some wins under his belt first. As for why he joined AEW, it's to cement his legacy and outwork everyone. Much like the cheap shot artists that Mox made them out to be, the Good Brothers jump Eddie Kingston during his entrance. A taped-up Moxley comes running out of the crowd and evens the odds. They brawl around ringside for a bit before the actual match starts. Gallows and Anderson isolate Eddie while Moxley plays up his shoulder injury on the apron. When he gets the hot tag, for some reason he uses that arm to deliver a couple of lariats and turn the tide. Eddie and Gallows battle to the outside, allowing Mox to roll up Anderson for the victory. In what's becoming a really bad trend though, Gallows beats up Moxley after the bell, which brings out Kenny Omega with a chair. He sits it down beside Mox just as Eddie tackles him, so the Good Brothers give Kingston a magic killer. Don Callis hands the chair back to Kenny so the heels can use it to Pillmanize Eddie's leg from the top rope. They try the same thing with Moxley's neck, but thankfully the Young Bucks run out and stop them. A huge argument ensues until Kenny and the Good Brothers hold up the too sweet hand gesture, but the Bucks refuse and start to walk away. Omega grabs Matt and seemingly demands they reciprocate. Instead, they refuse again before Moxley chases everyone off with a chair. Tony Schiavone introduces Sting and Darby Allin for an interview. He asks Darby about Scorpio Sky's attack last week. Surprisingly, Allin changes topics and complains that he's only defended his title 3 times since winning it. Now that Team Taz is behind him, he wants to be a fighting champion. So in honor of the greatest TNT champion of all time, Brody Lee, he issues an open challenge to any member of the Dark Order. Lance Archer interrupts and makes a comment about how often Schiavone interviews Sting. He's not wrong. Then, he calls Darby an indie-rific joke and says it's his time. Jake the Snake brings up his own history with Sting before warning that Archer is the biggest, baddest SOB in AEW, so they better not play with fire. Unfortunately, that's not the only interruption, as Team Taz comes out of the heel tunnel. In a relatively big shock though, Brian Cage grabs the mic and gets in Sting's face. He says that after their street fight, he respects the Stinger, and Ricky Starks is wrong, because with or without his bat, he's still the icon. This infuriates the rest of his team, who chase after Cage as he storms off. After losing his shot at the TNT title last week, Scorpio Sky says he's a wrestling savant and will no longer be anyone's stepping stone. Cool story, bro, now back it up. Rey Fenix is joined by Pac as he takes on Angelico of the Hybrid 2, absent his partner Jack Evans. This is an interesting contrast between two completely different styles of lucha libre. Angelico is a submission expert while Fenix is a high flyer, but we all knew how this would end. After escaping the Navarro death roll, Fenix hits a crucifix bomb, followed by a sit-out pile driver for the win. Alex Marvez catches up with Miro in the gym and asks about Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy's challenge. Miro says he's intrigued by the idea of Charles being his lifelong butler, but he's moved on. However, Kip says he hasn't. The best friends ruined his wedding, and Miro should care. After all, he pushed them into Penelope and got her injured. Miro advises Kip to never bring his wife to the ring, a shot at his booking with Lana in WWE. Then says during matches, he only cares about winning. Outside of the ring though, they're still buddies. With that, Kip accepts the challenge. Speaking of accepting challenges, Alex Marvez seemingly teleports over to the Dark Order's lounge where they've all traded in their customary purple gear for Kelly Green, and they're ready to announce who will represent them against Darby Allin next week for the TNT title. Initially, -1 jumps out and accepts, but Evil Uno reminds him that he's only 9 years old. So instead, they all pick the Meat Man, John Silver, which leads to chants of "Meat, meat, meat." The Pinnacle are outside the Inner Circle's locker room. MJF hangs up a new sign, and they walk in, fulfilling his promise from earlier in the night. Justin Roberts gives the same speech he gave all the way back when Kenny Omega fought Jon Moxley in an unsanctioned match. Once the lights are turned off, the show is considered over, and AEW is no longer responsible for what happens. I know it can feel a little corny, but I think this adds some legitimacy to the match. The champion Hikaru Shida watches on from backstage, while Jade Cargill watches on from the stands. Things start fast as Rebel attacks Rosa with her crutch, allowing Baker to hit a tope and an air raid crash on the stage. Immediately after a commercial break, Britt suplexes Rosa onto a pile of chairs that's materialized. Rebel pulls out a ladder, but a now bloody Thunder Rosa dropkicks it into Baker's face, causing her to bleed as well. She's not done yet though, putting the dentist through the ladder with a Death Valley driver. Baker counters that with a curb stomp onto one of the chairs, then she gets out the thumbtacks. When Rosa reverses a move, Rebel tries to interfere again, but ends up going through a table she ironically set up earlier. Eventually, Thunder Rosa is able to powerbomb Britt into the thumbtacks, but somehow she kicks out. In a really innovative spot, Baker applies the lockjaw, but Rosa rolls her into the tacks to break it up. Finally, she gets Britt on the apron and delivers an incredible Fire Thunder driver through another table to win the match and the feud. I'd like to point out that despite all the criticism AEW's women's division receives, they main evented Dynamite only a little more than a year after it debuted. Compare that to WWE, which took more than a decade before women main evented Raw. And oh my god, what a match! Those ladies left their blood, sweat, and tears on the mat. Literally. Now let's just see if they can keep up this momentum moving forward. Honestly, this may have been my favorite episode of Dynamite so far this year, and yes, I know I say that every week. It was absolutely jam-packed with excellent in-ring action, character development, and storyline advancement, and somehow they managed to do all that without the entire Inner Circle or Hangman Adam Page, amongst others. That just speaks to the depth of their roster. But in all seriousness, I love AEW, and Dynamite is so much fun to watch. I'm just glad wrestling fans finally have something like this after years of being under Vince's thumb. Alright, that'll do it for AEW's St. Patrick's Day Smash. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I've been posting a lot of fig hunting videos lately, so definitely check those out. And I should have some competitions up this weekend for the various belts in our Predictions League. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to do all that normal YouTube stuff. Smash the like button, share with any wrestling or action figure fans you may know, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. You can also talk to me over on Twitter at WrestlingOptimus, or see all my best figure photography over on Instagram at WrestlingOptimus. If you haven't seen my most recent unboxing video, you can check that out right here. But until next time, I've been Wrestling Optimus, and I'll catch you later.